Cloudflare has been killing it in the past year, and from a dev perspective, even though Cloudflare Workers have been around since 2017, the hype has definitely gained momentum, so what better way than to put it all together in this video with things that I've been working with lately like Bun, Hono, and Drizzle ORM. The goal of the video is just to deploy a full-fledged API to it, which has access to a database. If you're looking for other ways to deploy a Bun REST API, check out the full video I made on this exact topic in the description. The one thing that surprised me is the amount of other products that they offer, like D1, which is a serverless SQL database, and we'll actually use this in this video. Message queues, KV, which is a low latency key value storage, perfect for caching things, and a lot more. Let me know if you want me to cover any of these things in a different video, but for now, we'll just focus on Cloudflare Workers and D1. They actually have a lot of different examples on the website. Here they have a way to return JSON. They even have ways to alter headers, cookie parsing, and a lot of different things that you can do just using Cloudflare Workers. If I take a look at the return JSON example, you'll see here that this is all you need. You can actually take this piece of code and deploy it to your Cloudflare worker, and whenever it receives a request, it'll just return some JSON with the data, which is just hello world. So for this purpose, returning JSON is actually very straightforward. Where we need help is things like routing, and this is where Hono comes in. Since Hono is very lightweight and fast, we can just use it for our project. And to get started, I'll just go to my terminal and do bun create Hono, and then the name of the project. So in this case, I'll just call it CFW for Cloudflare Workers, Bun, Hono, and Drizzle, since this is our full stack. Now it's going to ask us what template we want to use. I'll use Cloudflare Workers. Next, it's going to ask if we want to install the project dependencies, to which I'll say yes. And for the package manager, I'll use Bun. All of the source code for this project can be found on my GitHub. You can see that it starts off with just the empty blank project for you to follow along, but if you go to my branches, there's another branch called routing and Drizzle ORM. This is actually the finished product. I also updated the README if you want to just run through the commands and get up and running. So now that everything was installed, I can just CD into the folder. So I'll do CFW, and then I'll just open this in my terminal. And in my case, I'll use VS Code. So I'll do code dot. And to quickly run you guys through the project structure, we have the node modules. This comes with pretty much any standard bun or node project, so I don't need to go over that. We have our getignore, our bun lock file, the package JSON, we'll go into that in a second. The README, which just has some simple instructions like npm install, but these don't apply to us since we're using bun. Our tsconfig, and a wrangler.toml file, which is basically just for any configuration that we want to do for our project. It starts off with two simple things, just the name of the project and a date. But as you can see here, commented out, we can do a lot of different things. We can add Env Variables, namespaces, buckets, and we'll look at this in a second for how to add a database. If we go back to our package JSON, you'll see that for the dev command and for the deploy command, we're using the Wrangler CLI. This is just a CLI tool used for Cloudflare. But then in our source folder, we have the index.ts file, and this simply just starts a basic API for us. You'll see that it's just creating a Hono app, and then from here, creating an endpoint, which just returns hello Hono. Wrangler provides a way for us to test this locally, so all we have to do is just open up our terminal and do bun run dev, and you'll see that it started it on port 8787. So if we open this up, all we have here is just hello Hono. Going back to the project, if I cancel out of this, we can actually do bun run deploy. This will push it out to Cloudflare and provide us with a URL that we can use to hit our API. In my case, since I've already had Wrangler set up, it just pushed it out for me. But in your case, you might have to go through the permission step, which is it'll open up the browser for you and you just have to accept their terms and conditions or whatever. But this was it. As you can see, I have the URL here, and if I go to it, I am getting hello Hono again, and this is coming directly from my Cloudflare worker. If I actually go to my dashboard on Cloudflare and I go down to workers, you'll see that the project that we just deployed is right here. And if I go into it, it has a lot of different metrics and logs, but if I go to deployments, the deploy that we just did, which is a minute ago, and using Wrangler is right here. Next, going back to our terminal, I want to install the dependencies that we'll need in this project. So I'll start with the Drizzle ORM by doing bun install Drizzle ORM, and also the libsql client. Then I also want to do bun install -d for development and the Drizzle kit. We'll quickly check this in the package JSON that everything was installed correctly. And we see the Drizzle kit under dev dependencies and Drizzle ORM and the libsql client under dependencies. So now that that's done, we can actually create our first database by doing bun x wrangler D1. Since we're creating a D1 database, create CFW. This is the name. I'll just call it the same as the project -d. So I'll do CFW bun Hono Drizzle D1. It'll go through the process of creating the database for us, and once that's done, you'll see here that it provides us with the values that we want to put in our wrangler.toml. So I'll just copy and paste this inside of here like that. But once we have our database, we can start focusing on the routes and everything else that we want to do. One of the first things I want to show you is how to get your Env variables into your routes. So we'll do that by exporting a type. So we'll do export type env. And in here, we can start off with a first value. So if I go to variables and I uncomment this, if I have my var, my variable, I save this, go back in here. So I'll have my var, which is just a string. Then in order to use this value within my API and get some type safety working, I have to go to my Hono app and do bindings and then pass in that type. So I'll do env, and that should be all I have to do. So now if I go in here and I do c.env, you'll see that I have my var here. So if I select that, actually I messed up here. I'll put it inside of a template string. So I'll do that. And now that shouldn't complain anymore. But if I now do bun run dev and I go back to my API, you'll see that I get my variable showing up on the UI. This is perfect if you have URLs for other services and things that you want to use. You can just add another variable in here and it'll just use it in your application. The problem comes if you want to have variables that are a bit more private, you don't want to put them in here, which you're going to end up having to commit to your repo. In that case, what you want to do is you want to create a new file and call it .dev.vars. Any variables that you put in here are exactly the same way. They get imported into your env right here, but these will be hidden. So if you take a look at your get ignored, this already comes in here as .dev.vars. And if I was to do private and just say this is private, putting this in here and just giving it string private, I'll restart my server. And in this case, you'll see private showing up here with the value of hidden, which is exactly what we want. We don't want people seeing this value. Going to our URL, you'll see that now this is private. We won't be using this in this video, but it's just still good to know about. The one value that we are going to want in here is our DB value, and we can give this the type of D1 database. This is going to be the way that we access our database by passing this to Drizzle. I'll start off with the Drizzle config. This is pretty straightforward. So drizzle.config.json. I'll copy and paste the config in here. It's basically just creating the Drizzle folder and putting our migrations in the migrations folder, and then using the schema from our source DB schema. Let's next set up our package JSON. In here, I'll have two commands. We'll have the DB generate, which just generates a new migration for us. In this case, since we're using SQLite, we'll use that. And then we also have DB up, which just brings our database up to date. Next, I'll just create the DB folder in here, and then my schema file in here. So I'll call it schema.ts. The schema is pretty straightforward. It's a post table that has an ID, a title, content, and a timestamp for when this was created. If you're curious about Drizzle and seeing more of its features in action, make sure to check out my Drizzle video in the description. But for now, this should do. And then we can go back to our index. We don't have this anymore. I'll just delete this. And we can start by generating our migrations. So I'll just open up my terminal and run bun run db generate. You'll see that in our Drizzle folder, we now have our new migration, which just creates the table for the posts. But yeah, with that out of the way, we can actually start using our database. So I'll just delete this for now and then call this const db. And this is where we end up using Drizzle. So I'll call it Drizzle. And we want to import this from Drizzle ORM D1. So I'll do that. And then we can just do c.env.db. With this in place, we should be able to just connect to our database and use Drizzle to query it. So I'll just do that by doing const result is equal to await. And we also have to make sure that we convert this to async. So I'll do await db dot select, and we'll do from posts. We also want to import that from our schema, and then all. This should be returning all of our posts for us. So if I do posts in here and then do a return c.json with the value of the result, this should be getting us all of the posts in our database. So I can just do bun run dev. We'll get a 404 not found since we don't have the home page anymore. But if I go to /posts, oh, and you'll see that we have an internal server error. And if you look at it, it says that no such table posts exists. And this is because we never actually applied our migrations to the local database. And to do that, we can run bunx wrangler D1 execute, and then the name of the database, which in our case is cfw-bun-hono-drizzle-d1. And we want to use the local flag, and this is for the local database, and then --file. And the file that we want to use here is the migration right here. So I'll just copy and paste this file name and go back to my terminal and do /drizzle /migrations/ the file name, and running this, it looks like it successfully ran on our database, and we should be able to just go back to our development environment, go to /posts, and then we'll get an empty array here. If you're looking to connect to your local database, you can just go to .wrangler, and in here we'll have the state D1, and this file is actually your local SQLite database. And all you have to do is just, at least in my case, I'll copy this path, go to my database here, my database connections, I'll create a connection, and if I select SQLite, you'll see that it's asking for a path here. I'll copy and paste my path and just click connect, and that's it. I have my table here with my posts. Since this is working, we're finally able to deploy this to production, but we have one more step before we do that, so I'll go back to this command, which is running the migration file, and instead of --local, we have to do --remote. And what this does, it basically just applies that same migration to our remote database, which is living on Cloudflare. But once that executed, we can actually go back to Cloudflare, and under workers, we have the D1 beta, and in here, our database should be showing up. So if we click into it, we now should be seeing the new table posts in here with the 4 columns. We don't have any data, so nothing's going to show up, but we do have the ID, the title, the content, and the timestamp as the columns. But yeah, now we're ready to just run deploy. The deploy is pretty fast. You'll see that I forgot to delete my var from here, but if we go to our URL now and we get the 404 not found since we don't have that page anymore, and we go to /posts, there's no errors and we just get an empty array. I'll add one more route in here. I'll do a .post, and this is also going to be /posts, an async with the context, and in here we want to do the same thing. So I'll do const db is equal to drizzle and the cmv db. But this time I want to get from the request payload the title and the content. So by doing that, we'll do await c.request.json. And for the result coming back from the database, we'll do await db.insert into the posts table with the values that were passed in. So we'll do title, content, and we also want to make sure that we specify here returning, just so we get the values that were inserted as our result. All that's left now is just to do return c.json and then pass in the result. With this, we should also be able to now create posts. So I'll just quickly, without testing, just run deploy. Never actually do this in a production environment, but since our application is now deployed, opening up Insomnia, I can paste in the URL in here and I'll do a post. And for the JSON, I'll do title, and for the title, I'll just say subscribe. And for the content, I'll do to codebrew. Oh, and I actually forgot, for the URL, you want to do /posts, and sending this to the backend, we'll get back the post that we just created. And I can even do a get request now for the posts, and we'll get back the same list of posts. You can also validate this on the Cloudflare side, so I'll just refresh this, and the new value is right here. Let me know if you'd be interested in seeing this exact same video, but instead of using a D1 database, using something like Terso to deploy our database. But yeah, if basically it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe, and check out the other videos.